Hi guys, good evening. How's everyone doing? Hope you guys are doing well on this Tuesday evening, 7 p.m., right on the nose. We're going to get started today. Hope you guys had a good weekend. I think for the few of you that follow me and I try to put some updates on the website, on the Facebook group about my weekend. I had a really busy week last week and I ended up doing two Pilates sessions last week. And then on Friday evening, I played about an hour of golf, but it was like 85 degrees. And so that was just really hot, and I thought I couldn't handle it, but surprisingly, it did really well. I haven't been able to handle heat for a long time, especially when I was pretty sick, even though I am a complete like Florida girl and absolutely love the heat until I got really sick. And so then I have not been able to handle the heat quite a bit until I started getting better, of course. And so, yeah, I spent some time in the sun. And then on Sunday, it was actually a good friend's birthday, and we did like a walk in honor of her dad for PSP. He passed away from Parkinson's. And so we had done this walk in the heat. It was like, gosh, 85 degrees on Sunday morning, and I was just nervous. And of course, after an hour of walking and then just doing the picnic and things like that, it was uh, it was a lot. I was done by that point. But anyways, just a really busy weekend. I love to always start and share, with some positive things, some achievements, some successes, little victories, even the smallest of things. If you can share, put in the comments here, even the smallest of victories that you have encountered in the last week or in the last few weeks or even in the last 2 days. It's always so important to focus on the victories and the positive things, because our mind always wants to go to the negative stuff and focus on the negative things. But it's really nice to focus on the positive, and that's what you're feeding and that's what you are growing. And so hopefully that's the direction you kind of lead your brain to. But anyways, let's get started. I always like to make this disclaimer that I am not a physician and this is not medical advice at all. This is really for educational purposes, but more importantly, just really sharing my experience with my illness and then my healing journey, and kind of what I used with my 15 plus years of practicing some principles of functional medicine. Um, so really, this is just more of my journey from my knowledge and everything that I did to achieve my optimal health and come out of that period of just being really ill. So always like to make that disclaimer. But let's get started. We have a lot of questions we need to get to, and that really, really excites me because you guys are really participating and throwing in these hard questions at me. You are really giving me some hard questions. So I really appreciate all the banter and all the communication on the group. So this is awesome. Let's get started with all the questions. I mean, I genuinely look forward to Tuesday night. I look forward to doing this. I can't wait to be in front of the screen and to really just start answering questions and talk about my experience and hopefully help, to some degree if I can, because I have, again, been there, done that, really sick, just couldn't do anything at all. And so for me, this is just so amazing to be able to sit here and help someone and pass this knowledge on and really, hopefully help, even if it helps one person. This is something that I really, really aspire and love to do. So let's get started with the awesome amount of questions that we have this time. So start with Amy. Amy, I know you had a couple of questions, and I'll try to get to some of them in different orders. But Amy, you had asked a question about the overuse of antibiotics, and you had kind of explained this whole thing where you had really used a lot of antibiotics, and then you had frequent yeast infections, and kind of what to do about all of this. And I'll tell you what, Amy, that is a very, very typical story that we hear, especially with people that have overuse of antibiotics. It is unfortunately very prevalent, especially in this country, how much antibiotics are used, even for the smallest infarctions to the largest things. And unfortunately, what that does to your gut is really kills even the good stuff, the good bacteria. And so the thing with functional medicine too is when we first start seeing a patient, we do what is called the matrix. It's basically a functional medicine matrix or the timeline. And really, for someone like yourself, if you were being seen by a functional medicine practitioner, then we would start all the way from birth and how you were delivered. And, were you C-section? Were you regular delivery? And then if you had use of antibiotics in the first 10 years of your life. And really, we just map out the entire timeline of your life from 0 to, whatever age you are now. And along those lines, we really start filling in these things about, C-section versus vaginal birth, or, use of antibiotics and how often and how many surgeries and trauma and things like that, to really give us a snapshot. And so in your case, I mean, I definitely in that timeline, we would be putting in the fact that you had overuse of antibiotics in your adult years. Let's just say, I'm just going to guess because I don't know how old you are, but let's just say, in your 40s onwards till 50, you just had this overuse of antibiotics. And so we start putting all of that in the timeline to really address the things that are triggers and antecedents, and what's mediators and what's triggers at this point for you and things like that. And so one of the things that really in this case we would start with is just healing the gut. That's going to be the critical thing that we are always going to address first, especially in this case because you've had overuse of antibiotics. And if you remember, I think it was in the second, maybe the first or second live, I can't quite remember, but I really talked about healing the gut and kind of put forth a very small but simple protocol where we did the 5 R's. I believe it was the third live. And so I had put forth like this 5 R's protocol that we use in functional medicine to really heal the gut, remove and renoculate and replace and all of that. So definitely go back to that one if you haven't seen it, or anybody listening today, if you haven't watched that one. The healing the gut is actually very, very critical in any healing journey, especially one of chronic illness. Um, and in that, we had talked a little bit about elimination diet, talking about taking out inflammatory foods like gluten and dairy, things like that. We had really talked about the benefit of that. And, that is really a place I would start, if I were you as well. Just, I had to do that as well. When I got really sick, I got tested twice for celiac and it just kept showing up negative. And the doctors kept telling me, oh, you don't need to stop gluten. You're fine. You don't have any issues. And I just didn't feel great. I was so sick. And so I really did. For a year, I was completely vegan and gluten free. And I've remained gluten free all these years later. I do occasionally eat some dairy here and there, but very little. So yeah, so the elimination diet would be a great, place for you to start. And I'm not going to make assumptions here and guess. Like, you really do need to have a GI stool test where they really test your stool for SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, to see what good bacteria you're lacking, what bad bacteria has, overgrown and taken over in your gut, and then, really test for Candida, which you probably may have already been done. Um, and because you said you get frequent yeast infections, so really you can't just shoot in the dark and just say, okay, do this protocol, do this, because you really need to get tested first to see. And honestly, the gut is like the core, the foundation of your body. So if your gut is not healthy, you will be very sick. You will have allergies, and you will have intolerances, and you will have inflammatory issues. And the largest amount of your immune system is in your gut. You'll have a very hyper responsive immune system. So unfortunately, that's really the first place to go to, and you have to get tested to see what the issues are, what your issues may be different from someone else's issues. But then you had also asked a question about treating Candida, and what are the treatment options. I can tell you that I know that physicians will really typically prescribe diflucan or nystatin. for Candida. And then there's a lot of holistic or natural um, treatment options out there. I know ivermectin is used quite a bit to treat Candida with a lot of success. Mega Mycobalance, that's another one that is a natural one that's used. And my favorite is Mycozil, which is from the same company that I have talked about multiple times, that I just absolutely love all their products. And I used their products for about 7 years myself, my family. I mean, I was so sick, and really, those are the only products that work for me. And I used their products for about 7 years. And I've said this before, but it was not until about 3 or 4 months ago that I got affiliated with them. But really, for the first 7 years, I just used all their products, and they were really godsend for me. So I've talked about the company before, and I can put the link over here. Let me see if I can copy and paste this. You guys can hopefully, whatever discounts they have, you guys can get right now. Um, but this is a company that I use and that I absolutely love their products. And so they have a product called Mycozil, which is made of natural tree barks and plants. Um, and it's got beta glucanase, it's got organic anise and licorice and fulvic acid. I mean, it's just this amazing stuff. And so when I was really sick, originally, and had no idea what was going on with me, and the owner of this company, he's a naturopathic doctor, he's a DO or a chiropractor. I mean, he's got all these certifications, which I honestly don't even know what a lot of those letters mean behind his name, but he's just one of the most brilliant guys out there. Um, his name is Dr. Group, and he put forth and just set up a very intensive program for me that I followed for the first 6 months after I had gone through all of the medical world treatment and none of the doctors could figure me out. I was so sick, and yet they kept just specialty after specialty kept sending me home and saying, I'm normal, I'm great, and I was just sick. I couldn't even get out of bed. I couldn't even empty a single dishwasher. I couldn't even carry one grocery bag from the car to the house. I couldn't take care of the kids. And so Dr. Group then ended up putting me on this entire amazing protocol, using all of his products from Global Healing. And Mycozil was one of them. I never got tested at the time for Candida, but he put me on a complete protocol for parasites and for fungus. And Mycozil was one of the things that I was on for a very long time. And it really, I think it helped me quite a bit. So it really targets, Candida overgrowth, and it targets, it keeps the good bacteria in check, and doesn't kill the good bacteria. And so it really helps. So the other thing I will tell you, Amy, for Candida, they have a very um, active group on Facebook. I think it's called a Candida support group or something, and it's got like 47,000 people on it. It's just a great group to join to really find out a lot of information. But like I said, I mean, you can read all this stuff on the internet, and it's just overwhelming when you are trying to throw so many treatments at yourself versus really being seen by a functional medicine practitioner who really will do all the testing to find out, because functional medicine is very individualized medicine, and so it's not the same thing for you and the same thing for me. It's very individualized to you, and so that should hopefully help get to the root of all the problems that you may be facing, and then you could be treated accordingly. So I hope that answers your question about the overuse of antibiotics and frequent yeast infections and things like that. Let me see over here, I think. Okay, perfect. And then David had asked about nootropics and brain health. I think actually, and they're very helpful, very useful. They really help with healing inflammation in the brain, this whole brain on fire type symptom that most people with chronic illnesses have, that I really had. My brain felt on fire. I kept trying to explain this to my husband, that I felt like my brain was on fire. And so nootropics are actually really great for that. You asked about methylene blue. I'm going to be honest in telling you I have no personal experience with it. I know I've heard and read very good things about it, and it's had good successes, but it's just something I've never used, so I don't have any personal experience with it. But for me, and again, when I was really sick and I got on that whole program that I was put on by the naturopathic doctor, he had me on Neurofusion, which is again the link that I put down there, the same company, Global Healing. He had me on Neurofusion, and I really, really like that. It has lithium orotate in it, it has L-Dopa, it has Bacopa, it has rhodiola. I mean, all of those things are considered nootropics, and they help really with brain inflammation, really healing the brain. So for me, Neurofusion was a great, great piece that I used for at least a year, maybe even a year and a half. I have also, my acupuncturist at one point put me on Neuroflam. That was actually really helpful too. That was a lot later in my journey after I was better. It has catechins in it. It has curcuminoids like turmeric extract, resveratrol. It's got a bunch of stuff in it as well. So Neuroflam by Apex Energetics is another decent one out there. Um, the other thing, for brain inflammation, and I think, David, you said you had a traumatic brain injury. Um, Rectal ozone is something that people swear by, but hyperbaric oxygen treatments are actually excellent for traumatic brain injuries. I have used that even in my years, my previous life as a physical therapist, and we've done a lot of hyperbaric treatment for wound healing. But the most success we've seen is for traumatic brain injuries. And in fact, when I was very, very ill in my journey and I was getting hyperbaric oxygen treatments, there was a young lady that used to sit behind me in the chamber. And um, one of the days that we were there, everyone was congratulating her and wishing her well. And I said, "Oh, are you going somewhere?" And she said, she had been coming to get hyperbaric oxygen treatments. That was her, I think she said her 60th treatment. And that when she came in, she was in a wheelchair. She had had some, I believe it was a bad car accident, and she came in a wheelchair. And 60 visits later, not only was she walking normally, I would have never been able to tell because I'd always seen her walk in, but she was starting work again the next day in the financial field. She had been off work for almost 2 years because of her brain injury. And so, just in general, there's so much data out there, especially if you look at data from Israel. They have a lot of data on hyperbaric oxygen and what atmospheres and what settings and things to use. So really, that's something that I would suggest, David, if you were really looking for some help with the traumatic brain injury, then look into hyperbaric oxygen treatments. Those are actually very, very beneficial. Um, let's see, hope that answers his question. And then Amy had a list of very long questions. So I broke them all down just to be sure that I can help everybody understand and not make this personalized. But these are some great questions, and I just wanted to kind of break them all down. So Amy had asked, did I ever try acupuncture and what are my thoughts on it? So I will tell you, Amy, that was the very first person that actually agreed that something was wrong with me. I had seen probably 7 or 8 different MDs, different subspecialties. I had seen primary care, I had seen endocrinologists, 2 of them. I had seen 2 hepatologists, I had seen 2 rheumatologists. I had seen all these doctors, and no one could tell me what was wrong with me. They all just kept saying, "You are our perfect patient. You are in the best health." And I was sick. I was so sick. I could barely see straight, barely think straight. I was crawling into their office, and they're like, "Nope, you're great. There's nothing wrong with you. It's all in your head. You're perfectly fine. You're our healthiest patient." And a friend of mine then recommended an acupuncturist local in town where I live. And I went to see her, and she is an acupuncturist, and she's also a Chinese herbal specialist or Chinese medicine specialist. And I told her the whole story and kind of what had been going on, and like we went through all this trauma, and that I was exhausted and I was really bedridden. And she was the first person to ever tell me, "Oh yeah, you have adrenal failure." It was just like a light bulb moment. I mean, no one had even addressed my adrenals at this point. So yes, I am a huge, huge fan of acupuncturists, and in fact, till this day, I still go to see her for a tune-up, or once in a while, I'll go see her because she's just Excellent, excellent. And I have actually talked to her about coming on these lives because I really would like to interview her, for people that don't have access to functional medicine doctors, or if it's just, financially a burden for people, then I believe acupuncturists are just amazing in what they're trained to do. They can really help figure out and pinpoint the problem, but all the meridians and the channels and things that they work on, and then the acupuncture treatments that they use can really help reset you and can really help calm the immune system down that is just hypersensitive. So I'm a full believer, and the one I go to, she's just fantastic. So I hope to have her on the live one day and just to have an interview with her, just because she's so knowledgeable about everything, and she was really key in my healing journey. Now, after that, I went down this rabbit hole because then I saw a functional medicine doctor who then diagnosed me with SIRS and premature ovarian failure and MCAs and chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. And then I got all these, diagnoses thrown at me and labels and all of that. So my journey ended up being a very different journey. But she is just one person who has stayed consistent in my journey. And like I said, till this day, I still go see her once in a while when I need it. And then Amy's other question was, and I'm just paraphrasing them, she had put a bunch of questions, but Amy's other question was, how do you heal and not have the urge to throw everything at once? Um, Again, this is where I would say, Amy, you have to do everything step by step. You can have so many symptoms, and when you read things, you're like, that's me, that's certainly me. And I was like that, but the thing is that everyone's journey is so different and everyone is so all over the place that it would just be really throwing stuff at you. Plus you don't know contraindications, you don't know things that are reacting. So it's very, it's really difficult to just say, oh, I'm going to take this supplement, that supplement, and throw everything at yourself and the kitchen sink. It's just a really tough thing to do. You really need to heal this step by step. And this is why I've suggested, I know earlier on too, but about seeing a functional medicine doctor, because they can take it at your pace and they can do all the tests that are needed to find out the root cause of what could be going on with you. Um, in functional medicine, we have this two tacks rule, that if you're sitting on two tacks and on your butt, you're sitting on your butt and there's two tacks and it really hurts. And if you take one tack away, then the pain is not going to decrease by 50%. You're still going to have pain. And so, trying to just address your symptoms and saying, okay, I'm going to take this supplement and this medicine and take this, to help me with my brain fog, and this to help me with my pain, and, things like that, is just really taking one tack away. It doesn't take the two tacks away for you to be pain free. And so I really recommend that you see a functional medicine doctor who will help you get to the root cause of all the issues that you're having, but also for everyone else that is here. This is really critical in knowing that, yes, you can read so much online. I mean, Dr. Google is amazing in giving you all the medical information that most MDs get in 16 years. You can get it in 16 seconds. But, again, every one of these things have to be looked at and tested by a physician or by a functional medicine practitioner, and then you can tackle how to address this. um, Amy's other question was, and I really wanted to address this one because I know it's come up quite a few times, do you think exercise helped you heal? um, I'm actually going to say no. And in fact, I think because of how I'm type A and I kept pushing myself in the beginning, exercise made me a lot worse. And if you guys go back and listen to all the previous lives that I have done, especially the first and the second one, I exclusively talk about this journey of mine and how after almost 2 years of healing and putting in so much hard work, including a 6 day water only fast, when I did everything possible and I healed a little bit and I got better, and then I kind of pushed myself and I went to weight training very quickly and I crashed. So, do you think exercise helped me heal? No. In fact, it's really not necessary. And in the beginning, and when I say beginning, even a year or two, you almost cannot exercise because your adrenals are tanked. Your body, in my case, I was just reacting to any kind of, I think my body perceived it as stress again. And so I would just swell up and I would just really not be well. And I would just have so much pain afterwards and I'd be bedridden again. So I say this because we have this question a lot. Do not push yourself. I know someone else had posted a comment last week about how they really wanted to exercise and they were going to push themselves. I really, really suggest to take it very slow. Again, for all the people that are new on the group, and we've had just such an explosion of people in the group, which I very appreciate. Um, Please go back and watch the lives. I have them pinned on the top of the group, and they're really pinned in order of the dates they were done. And so you will see, I've talked so much about the different stages of how you should even exercise, whether you just start with grounding and earthing first, and standing outside on the bare grass with your bare feet, sitting on your front porch, to walking down your driveway a little bit, maybe some restorative yoga, maybe some qigong. I mean, very, very basic stuff. And this is even stuff that comes later on. Initially, you just need to rest and give your body the tools that it needs to heal. So no, I do not think exercise is critical in helping someone heal. In fact, it might be detrimental if you push yourself too much. Um, the one thing I will say that instead, because I really did like exercising and it was just sad not to be able to exercise or anything, but I did like saunas a lot. I did saunas, and I would do like the hot. If I went to the gym, I would not exercise in the gym, but I would use their sauna, and then I would take a very, very ice cold shower. Or if I got in the jacuzzi, and then I would get in like very cold water. Those actually helped me a lot more. And I also have talked about this in the previous lives. Um, about how as physical therapists we use contrast baths a lot, hot and cold, for inflammation, especially if you come to me with an ankle swollen or injury or whatever. We do a lot of contrast baths. So for me, I was just doing contrast bath for the whole body, where I would do sauna. I could barely handle 5 or 10 minutes in the beginning. Now I'm pretty good for 15, 20 minutes, but 5 minutes in the beginning, it's all I could handle. And then I would just do a cold, very cold shower. And really, what that helps with is a lot is inflammation, because you're causing vasodilation first, and then you're really causing vasoconstriction with the cold water. And so you're really pumping any of that fluid and inflammation out of there. But for me, that was extremely helpful. And I would feel so much better after the cold plunge. It just helped with my systemic inflammation. So even something as basic as that to start with would be very, very helpful, and nothing else. Um, and then the other thing with the cold plunges and even the cold showers, it really stimulates your vagus nerve. And so when you stimulate your vagus nerve, you really stimulate your autonomic nervous system, things you cannot control, like your heart rate and your metabolism. And it really takes you out of fight or flight mode, which is also very necessary in healing. Um, and so there's so many other things that you can do. I've talked a lot about grounding or earthing, and I'm a big fan of that. So there's so many other things that you can do which will actually benefit you more and help you more than exercising. Then your next question, because you had quite a few questions in one, you had said, how do I deal with this from a mental perspective? Not letting this thing get the best of me. Um, I think you mentioned something about you were having a tough time going on. And, in my case, I think I have young kids. And so that was a motivation for you, or something like that, if I remember this question correctly. But, I will tell you, this is tough. This is a really tough journey. And especially for someone like me, I had mentioned this before, I was a go, go, go kind of person, 100 miles a minute, sometimes 200 miles a minute, and really just go getter. Wake up at 4:30 in the morning and I hit the ground running. And I have 3 young kids, and I was an entrepreneur. I was a philanthropist. I was running some nonprofits, and I had businesses, and I was a PT, and I was just going. And I had 3 young kids. My husband was traveling a lot, so he had a very busy schedule. And to go from that to literally becoming horizontal overnight and not being able to get out of bed was really, really difficult. For someone who had exercised for 20 plus years as a physical therapist, I was really in great shape, and not being able to exercise one fine morning. it was just the toughest thing you can deal with. And I was so sick for 2 years, so sick. 1 year I was pretty much bedridden. And then the second year too, I was so sick. My poor husband, I would just sit there and just cry and just not understand why I was so sick and why I wasn't getting better. And I will tell you, from a mental perspective, that is really, really tough on anybody. But how did I deal with it? I just kept going. I have this personality of I will not let this get the best of me. This is not the end of my story. This is not how my story is going to end. I had decided that I knew too well how good it felt to feel amazing. I knew too well how good it felt to lead a healthy and pain free life. That this was not going to be my story. This is not going to be the end of my story. I would find a way to get out of this and figure it out. The doctors couldn't figure me out. Everybody kept saying I looked normal, I looked great, but I was not well. And so I said I was on a quest that if they can't figure me out, I'm going to use my background of, 15 plus years of practicing functional medicine and being a PT, and I just became my own advocate. You have to become your own advocate for your health. You really have to say, this is what is going on with me. This is what I would like to do, and this is where I would like to be. And I set these goals for myself, and they were very, very slow goals. Um, in PT, we have short term goals and we have long term goals. And I think in this case, my goals, I had a reality check. There was no short term goals. It had to be long term goals and long term goals that I set for myself that would be a year, 2 years from now, because I just knew it. I knew that I was going to fight this thing regardless of the fact whether I had young kids or that my husband, it didn't matter. I had to do this for me, and I had to get better for me. And that was what this just kept me going. I knew all too well how good it felt to be healthy, and that's where I wanted to get to again. And so you really have to keep that in mind, especially, not letting this get the best of you, Amy, and anyone else out there listening to this. You really have to just keep that in mind, that you have to figure a way to be an advocate for your own health and get out of this and make it through, because that's the only way. That is the only way. There's no way but up. When you fall down, there's no way but up. And so you have to make it happen. So that was my story, and that's how I decided to beat this and get out of it. Did the doctors miss your adrenal failure? Yes, I just mentioned about that, and I had 7 or 8 subspecialties look at me in those 8 months. 2 rheumatologists, 2 hepatologists, primary care physicians, 2 endocrinologists. Everyone kept dismissing me and sending me home. My physicians all said I was the healthiest patient they had. Yet I was so sick and they didn't believe me. Even an OBGYN said the same thing to me. She said, "Oh, you're just in menopause." No, I was not in menopause. So, were you ever treated with meds for adrenals or thyroid? I was mentioning earlier on how my after that all of these doctors missed me and everything, I just went to an acupuncturist, and she was the first one who diagnosed me with adrenal failure. And so, the endocrinologist that I was seeing recommended that I get on thyroid meds because my TSH numbers were climbing up. I mean, they weren't crazy. If I remember correctly, they were like 2.35, and then I think I went up to 3 and then 3.2. And she recommended that I get on thyroid meds, and I knew I didn't have a thyroid issue. I told her with all due respect, I don't have a thyroid issue. Yes, my TSH is going up, but there's something else going on with my adrenals. Um, and all of that, which I again have talked about in one of the previous lives about the ovarian adrenal thyroid axis, and how if it's off balance, then you are going to have an imbalance and it's going to throw the entire stool off. You can't sit on that stool, it's not balanced. So I did not get on thyroid meds, but I just knew too much of what else could be going on. Um, Amy said I had several cortisone shots in my shoulders before all of this started. That will really do it. I mean, I very, very reluctantly a few years ago had to get a cortisone shot. And I remember having to do a Dutch test afterwards. And literally, I was flatlined. My entire cortisol curve was flatlined. And that was just with one cortisone injection because I was having just severe, I can't think, it was like neck pain, and they gave me one cortisone shot, and that's what it did to me. And that was the only time I've ever had any kind of cortisone shot or anything like that. So yeah, I can see how that could be the case. I wonder if I can trust Western medicine when they say everything is normal, yet I feel so exhausted and feel like I'm dying. Thankfully, never bedridden like you were, but deeply fatigued for 8 months. The one thing I am going to say, even despite my long and arduous journey, I am not going to knock conventional medicine. It has its place. Conventional medicine doctors are very, very brilliant in what they do, and they go to very, very long lengths of education and school and research and all of that. So I am not one to put down conventional medicine. I think they go hand in hand. I think they have their place. But I do feel that for me, it had gotten to the end of the road there when I even saw a urogynecologist. I had seen every subspecialty you can think of, and they couldn't figure me out. And I think that was when I just said, I'm going back to my functional medicine roots. This is what I've practiced. I'm trained in both. Obviously, as a physical therapist, I'm also trained in conventional medicine and health and all of that. But my other practice, has always been functional medicine. So I am not one to say that I can knock or not trust Western medicine, but I think it has its place. Again, I think you have to be your own advocate to really figure out your own health and how you can go from there. Um, and then last one from those long list of questions: do you have any known infection? Do you have any infections through this? I've had chronic sinusitis and a few low-grade UTIs that really zapped my energy. Um, so for me, no, but I do know that there was a period in maybe 2015, 14 or 15, something like that. I did have a series of two, excuse me, a tickle in my throat. I think it was like 2014 or 15 that I had a series of sinus infections back to back. Excuse me, there's a little tickle. um, and so I am very, very reluctant to get on antibiotics, just given my background and kind of the natural and holistic practices that I do. But there was a time when I had those back to back sinus infections and I was in a lot of pain. I did have to get on some antibiotics. But that's the only time that I can think of that I had any kind of infection. I had a sinus infection and it had gone into like a double ear infection, and I was just really not well. That was the one time that I said, I would get on these on the antibiotics, and that was the only known infection that I've had through any of this stuff. But this was a really long time ago. The one thing I am going to say to everyone that is listening, I'm just going to look through the comments here real quick. Um, the one thing I am going to say, um, everyone pretty much on this page that I see these comments and questions and just illnesses and chronic illnesses, and then all the questions that always come in. I mentioned this in some of the lives, so I apologize if this is a repeat for the people listening, but for the new listeners, I really, really recommend for you to go back and watch the rest of the lives, especially in order, because it really give you a good background of kind of what I went through, and then every single treatment. I pretty much did everything that was possible out there to help with my healing, and every treatment out there. Um, the one thing I will say, and I will say this with just certainty, is you need to heal your immune system. There is a common factor in everyone that has any kind of inflammatory issue or SIRS or chronic illness or Lyme or fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue. They are now finding more and more research out there that this is really based on a hyperreactive immune system. And so for me, after I had done my journey for 3+ years and I was barely healing and I was so sick and I had tried every protocol, including the Shoemaker protocol, because I was diagnosed with SIRS and chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and premature ovarian failure. And I mean, you name it, the diagnosis had been thrown at me, MCA and I had everything, interstitial cystitis and mitochondrial disorder, and everything was thrown at me. And that was when I decided to do my water only fast. And it was medically supervised. Please go back and watch, some of the previous lives that I've done where I talk in detail about the medically supervised water only fast. And for me, that was a game changer. And the thing with doing a medically supervised water only fast, especially mine was 6 days, and then I did 2 or 3 days of just juicing after that. Um, the thing with that is that it really, after 3 days, 72 hours, you reset your immune system. And so I knew right away then that this was helping me quite a bit, and I actually got about 40-50% better after that fast. And at the time, there was a doctor who was the one who was monitoring me down in West Palm Beach, and his name is Dr. Ron Drucker. I will put his link. He is a huge proponent of something called Digesticure, and it's an immune modulator. And when him and I first talked on the phone before I went down to West Palm, he spent an hour on the phone with me talking to me about this, and I was just frustrated. At that point, I had seen at least 50 different practitioners, whether it's conventional medicine, functional medicine, acupuncture, holistic, naturopath, chiropractor, you name it. And here, this guy comes along and he's like, okay, you really need to take this Digesticure, and it's the immune system modulator. And I started looking around. I started asking in the groups, and I started researching, that it made sense. It made sense that if you're so sick, then you really need to reset your immune system. I had already done DNRS, which is the dynamic neural retraining system, Annie Hopper's. And so I knew that really retraining your limbic system and kind of quieting down your immune system really should help. But at that point, when you're so sick and you have done so much out there, everything in the book, and then someone suggests one more medication, you almost want to just scream. You just want to be like, I've had enough of this, right? So I said, oh, we'll think about it later. And then, of course, I go down, I do the fast, and he's just a fantastic, fantastic physician. Um, and I really thought I should, follow some of his protocol. And so then he put me on this Digesticure, which I'm going to actually copy this link right now. And you can look at all the research that he has done and that there is out there on this supplement. It's a natural Ace Mannan supplement that they get from aloe. And it was a game changer for me. This is even way before LDN came in the picture. It was a complete game changer. I mean, don't get me wrong, the water only fasting probably helped me about 40%. I really, after the water only fasting, a month later, started walking about a mile, mile and a half, lost all the weight, all my inflammatory markers went down, my food sensitivities, everything went down, my allergic histamine reactions, everything went down. I couldn't even walk, and I was walking, a mile and a half, almost 2 miles in my neighborhood. And so that was really to do with the fast. But as soon as I came back, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I started this Digesticure, and I will tell you that this was a game changer for me. Game changer. Um, and so I'll put the link here. I am not affiliated with them. Do your own research. There's no financial benefit for me. But it really, since then, all the family members and patients that I put this on are just having amazing results. And do all the research. Read all about it. Watch the videos. He talks all about how, the data and the studies talk about the gliotoxins and how they help, really boost your immune system and things like that. So for me, that was a game changer. And I wanted to put this out there because I just see this common pattern here. Everyone is just so, so sick and so ill and so many multiple things going on that it would really be worthwhile to talk to your practitioner or whoever you're seeing, functional medicine doctor or nurse practitioner, whoever you're seeing. Talk to them about this because this is basically an aloe plant. This is their extract, and it's got amazing studies and data behind it. And this is way before I even got on the LDN. over a year or two ago before I even got on the LDN. So I had to put this out there just for people to know because I felt like it would be a disservice if I didn't mention it. I've mentioned it before, but really look into this. And I know that the company is available 24/7 to answer questions and guide you through the protocol and really talk to your provider first about this if this would be a good fit for you. And then Deb says, I had mold, Lyme, MCA, etc., nonstop ringing in my ears for 3 weeks. I'll tell you, Deb, so with the ringing, the tinnitus, and it's just there's multiple theories behind it. I don't know if people have ever, or if they've ever narrowed it down. Everyone has different thoughts and processes. I'm not going to claim to be an expert on this to know, but I will tell you that there's thoughts about MCA being a factor for this, brain inflammation being a factor for ears ringing, inability to detox is really, really a big factor um, for tinnitus and things like that. And then getting back to basics, which is healing the gut. So you really have to work with your practitioner to do all the stool testing and candida and SIBO and see what the good bacteria, bad bacteria, all of that is in your gut. And then really dealing with brain inflammation. If you go to the beginning of this podcast, I talked about some nootropics and things like that. And then also detoxification. The live that I did on April 5th, so I believe it was the second one that we had recorded, and it's on April 5th. I talk in great detail about detoxification in that one. I talk about phase 1 detoxification and then phase 2 detoxification. So if you haven't watched that, please go watch that because it will really benefit you, especially with if the whole theory of inability to detoxify is a good theory for ringing in your ears. So go back to that one and ask that. GM and Deb asked about LDN, like starting it, dosing, filler, side effects, etc. I'm gonna I tell you guys here real quick about it, but again, my first live, I believe it was March 29th or something, but go back and listen to that first live. I really explain pretty much everything about the LDN journey, how I started it, what I started on, how I stopped, bad mistake, got back on, all of that. I'm going to really talk about all of it, but I'll tell you guys real quick in a brief. My healthcare practitioner, so my functional medicine doctor, had prescribed it for me, and it was just amazing. But I will say this, and you have to take this with a caveat: just saying that I'm going to get on LDN is going to fix all my problems, it's not. Until that point, 5 years, I had led a very, very clean, healthy lifestyle, and I was actively treating myself and doing maybe 7 or 8 treatments a week. I mean, I was really, really working hard, and my diet was super clean, gluten free, vegan. I had started working out, like exercise, walking a little bit, and things like that. So, if any of you is here thinking that you can just take LDN and that it would be the answer to all your questions, it's really not the case. Um, with LDN, you have to have a very clean lifestyle. You have to be doing other treatments, and I had completely stopped caffeine for 5 years, no alcohol, all of that. So you really have to have it work hand in hand. But originally, my functional medicine practitioner started me on 1.5 milligrams, and then 2 weeks later, I had bumped it up to 3 milligrams. I never could make it up to 4.5. Even with the 1.5 and 3 milligrams, I was having so many sensitivities and side effects that I ended up stopping. Um, and that was a big mistake because then I crashed hard, and then I got back on and I did just so much better. But the second time around, so my first time around, I was taking the capsules and my filler was ginger. I had from the beginning told my functional medicine practitioner that I have all kinds of sensitivities, so I did not want the regular fillers that they use. I think it's Avichil and sucrose and all of that. I didn't want any of that. I just started out with ginger filler. For me, that's what worked for me. I know some people who have gut issues cannot do ginger filler, but for me, that's what worked. And then when I stopped, and then of course I crashed and I hated it and I had to get back on, I begged my functional medicine practitioner to put me on liquid. So here's again another example where you really, really have to be your own advocate because she didn't even know about the ginger filler. And she was more than willing to do it after I told her. And then even the liquid part, I was the one who pushed her and said, look, can we do liquid? Because then I can titrate the dose. Um, and she agreed. And so then I got on the liquid one, and I started off with the liquid, what is the equivalent amount of, I want to say, zero point 0.5 milligrams. And then I was able to go up to 1 milligram, and then 1.5 milligrams, and then 2 milligrams, and then I even made it up to 3, but then I had it started having a lot of side effects. And so then I dialed back down to 2 milligrams. It's liquid. I'm not giving you the liquid amount that I'm taking, but I dialed it back down to 2 milligrams, and that's been perfectly fine for me, especially since I've healed so much and I do so much other stuff, and I still take the Digesticure. And so for me, that was really all I needed to pretty much get back to baseline. So I hope that's a quick enough answer to answer your questions. But again, go back and watch the first one, especially where I talk the most about LDN. Um, and then I think the second one I talk about it as well. So Sue asked a very detailed question about, she gave me her start of her symptoms, a long story of her issues and symptoms today. And I will say the same thing to you, Sue. Based on all those symptoms that you put down and everything going on, they're very, very specific to you. And so you really need to see a functional medicine doctor, because I can sit here through this screen, give you all the possibilities and virtual suggestions, but I could be off. Um, some of what you've talked about, we've talked about in all the previous lives, and it's pretty much, some of it is a very generic um, kind of symptoms for any kind of chronic illness, but it just sounds like you have a lot going on. Then I really would suggest you being seen by a functional medicine doctor, because they need to do the tests to see what is going on with your gut. They need to check your inflammatory markers. They need to check all your hormones. They need to check your adrenals. Um, and then they can have a path for you. I don't want to sit here and make all these assumptions and tell you to do X, Y, and Z. I can give basic protocols, and I have in the past, of adrenals and sensitivities and food and things like that. But these tests will really give you a proper picture of what's going on with you specifically, and then we can kind of talk about treatment from there. So I hope that helps answer that detailed question that you had. Um, Darlene had asked about skin sensitivity. Her skin has become hypersensitive even to her own hair and tags and seams. Um, I'll tell you, Darlene, I don't know if you're working with a functional medicine practitioner, but a couple of things. It sounds like two things to me. Either you have very high oxalates, because oxalates are a little crystal-like and they form little crystals, and so when you touch your skin, it really, really hurts. Or MCA, or it could be anything else. Again, no way to know without proper testing. But usually with high oxalates, they kind of report these kind of symptoms and mast cell activation as well. I had it for quite a while too, when I was at the peak of my illness, and like even the slightest bump would just really hurt my skin. I recently got my oats testing done again, and I'm a lot better, and my oats testing looked much, much better. My oxalates were still slightly high, but nothing that would be of concern at this point. So I really would recommend you to see a practitioner and see if they would do oats testing, to find out if that's probably the case with you, or candida, or MCA. I mean, there could be a vast majority of things going on. Uh, DJRB asked if there's any insights how to clear mycotoxins from the body. Um, DJRB, I think I mentioned this earlier. Watch the live Q&A on April 5th. I really, really talk about how to detoxify your body from mycotoxins, and I talk about phase 1 detoxification, phase 2 detoxification, and I go into detail about these pathways and why they're so important, and why you really need to open your phase 2 channels first and then do your phase 1 detoxification. So watch that one. But as far as clearing mycotoxin and mold in your food, that was your second part of the question. How do you get rid of that? So I have a theory on this. So mold is everywhere, right? It's in the soil, it's outside, it's in your fruits and vegetables. Now, mold in your home, now that's a different story. Water damaged buildings and mold and growing out of your floor and walls and ceiling, that's a different story. That needs to be taken care of. But mold as far as in food, like I think you asked, in beans and legumes and things like that, that's going to be everywhere. There's some foods which are very high in mold, like coffee, and then any dried grains, beans, lentils, all of that has mold. So for me, the way I couldn't change my life to that degree. I'm already restricted in what I eat because I'm a vegetarian. And so for me, those are my main sources of food, which is my beans, my lentils, my grains, things like that. And so honestly, this is a very, very personal opinion, and it's my opinion. This is not, medical advice. This is not out there, but I really feel that my body should be able to clear these mycotoxins out. Now, does that mean I'll go eat a very rotten apple? No. But I take extra steps in washing my fruit very well. I don't use any sprays or any of the products and things like that. I don't like all that additional stuff. But just some gentle soap and water, or even just warm water, and really clean your fruits and vegetables well. Vinegar is actually really good to clean your fruits and vegetables to get out any of the mold. As far as beans and legumes and things are concerned, I use organic to the best of my ability, and then hopefully, that really helps minimize how much mold is coming into my body from these sources of food. But then beyond that, I just keep my pathways open. I sweat, I do sauna, I do dry brushing, I detox, I do infrared, I do just any kind of detoxification processes. I take milk thistle, I've taken glutathione for, short bursts, and then I stop. Liver cleanses, the same link that I put on earlier on with Global Healing. I have done multiple, I think about 7 liver cleanses. I did my 8th one in January. I'm getting ready to do my next one here in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I mean, I just keep, you cannot avoid all those things. They are all in your food. They are around you. They are in corn. They're in all, some supplements will use citric acid as a preservative. I mean, I try to not use that, but again, it's everywhere. And so for me, my body needs to be able to detoxify and get all that stuff out, versus really living a life of fear and living in that I can't eat this and I can't eat this. I already have a very restricted diet because I don't eat meat. So that's just my little take on, mycotoxins found in food and fruits and vegetables. Whoa, I've talked quite a bit for an hour straight here. I hope this has been really helpful to you guys. I see some comments here. Amy said she's looking into finding a functional medicine doctor. Yes, find someone at ifm.org. You want to make sure that they're a certified functional medicine practitioner. It is a pretty intensive um, pathway to go through. There's 6 modules, and then you have to do a 6-month case report on a patient, and then you have a written exam, 200 question exam or something. It's a pretty tough process. So I highly recommend you finding someone who's certified, IFM certified, that will really be able to address all of this step by step. Yeah, Amy says that she took Diflucan 5 days ago and she feels much better today. I wonder if Candida was driving so much of my fatigue. Yeah, that's the theory out there. Candida drives a lot of brain fog and fatigue, but again, for people who are chronically ill, your gut is an issue. And so that's why you need to address the gut as to small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, Candida. I mean, you can't just patch it up and say we're just going to treat this one thing and take that one tack off. You really have to address the root cause, and so none of this keeps coming back. Awesome, and you'll check out the Facebook group. Awesome. So Amy says, I've been trying baby steps on the cold at the end of a hot shower. Trying a quick blast of cold, but it's so shocking. Absolutely. I started out with like 10 seconds of I would do a hot shower, and then I would do 10 seconds, and really work my way up. And then, now I'm like good. I can do a cold plunge in an ice cold pool for over 2 to 5 minutes. I mean, it's really, really healing. I think somebody asked earlier on about how long. I do, but I'm really far ahead at this point, so take this with a grain of salt. 15 minutes in the sauna and then 2 to 5 minutes in an ice cold plunge. But that's like really years later after healing. If you're just starting out, I mean, even 2 to 5 minutes max, if that's all you can tolerate in the sauna, then just do that. And 30 seconds of a cold shower, it's really all you need. Um, it's been 8 years for me, just like you, Melissa says. Oh, so you were asking about the shower and sauna. I hope I answered that. Um, Yay, Amy, finally starting to tolerate the LDN. I know this was such a long journey for you, and you've had, a lot of side effects, as did I, and I just stuck with it. So you're still at only zero point 0.1 milligrams, and that's sometimes all you need. That's perfect. Oats testing, yes, oats is exactly the name of it, OATS. That's to really test your mitochondrial function, your candida, it tests your oxalates. Yes, that is it. Any recommendations? Oops. Um, any recommendations to move stagnant lymph besides dry brushing for someone who's very sensitive to detoxing? Um, Lisa, please watch my live on April 5th, I believe. It's my second live and it's pinned to the top. I talk in a lot of detail. And I'm not just sending you back there just because I want you to watch it. I was like you. I couldn't tolerate any any kind of detoxing. I couldn't even take a drop, one drop of homeopathic detoxing drops on my tongue. Could not tolerate it. I was so sensitive and my liver was so congested. And I talk in detail about the steps, from the dry brushing to the very gentle detoxing. Even I literally used to do 3 drops or 2 drops of distilled water on my tongue, and that was too much. I was herxing with that. Um, and so go back and watch those because I really talk about how you can step by step detox and start your way up really, really slowly. Um, and so I know we're past time and I love talking to you guys. So I'm going to answer this last question here real quick. David says, I already have my question for next week. Wondering if you could review a Dutch hormone test. Perhaps you have your own. How long do you wait for a second test? Um, and Gosh, there's so many questions coming in. I'm sorry, guys. I'll try to get to all of these next week, I promise. How long would you wait for a second test, and what did you do to move your results in your favor for next week? Yes, I will address that next week. My Dutch, I have taken about 9 Dutch tests so far, and I'm getting ready to take one next week, but it might be one of my last ones because I have really, really progressed, and I have done, my first Dutch was just heartbreakingly bad, and I was so sick, and over the years have come so far. And after my 6th Dutch test, my results look pretty good. So I will tell you guys next week. I might even give you some really exciting good news that I may have to share on my Dutch tests. I cannot interpret them because I'm not a physician, so I'm not allowed to interpret your Dutch test results. But yes, I've had so many done, and I can tell you what I did to really improve um, my hormone levels and get to where I'm at today. So I'm actually really excited because I'm going to do one next week, and I might have some exciting news for you guys. I don't want to spill the beans yet because I don't want to jinx myself, but and then there's so many more questions. Guys, you guys are amazing. There's so many questions that are coming in. I will bookmark all of these, and these will be the next questions that I answer first next week. And keep the questions coming. If you've already posted them here, still post them on that little image that I post of the Q&A, so I have all the questions in one place. But this has been awesome. Thank you guys again for joining. Thank you for these wonderful questions and keeping me on my toes. But above all, I hope I'm giving you guys enough information to help you in your healing journey. And you will get there too. You will really succeed if you keep trying and just stay at it. And earlier on, when I talked about not letting this be the end of your story and not letting this get the best of you, please keep fighting for your health, fighting for feeling normal again. Just don't give up. And we will continue next week. talk to you guys later. Bye bye.